Hello, my name is Creed and welcome to Writer's Blockbuster. In today's breakdown, we're taking a look at the 1985 film Lifeforce. This movie is awesome and it's based off of the 1976 book called The Space Vampires. If that title doesn't explain enough, then just let me confirm for you that this movie is indeed about vampires from space, and if that doesn't get you excited, then man, I don't know what will. So sharpen your stakes and bathe yourselves in garlic as we talk about what happens in Lifeforce. Also, there will be spoilers in this breakdown, so you've been warned. And if you enjoy videos like this, then consider subscribing, because crazy fun film is what this channel is all about.
August 9th, 2:30 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. The HMS Churchill, outward bound. On board a joint British-American space team. Their mission, to intercept and study the comet bearing Dr. Edmund Halley's name. The Churchill is the first spacecraft equipped with the Nerva engine. It propels the Churchill with constant acceleration, enough to create Earth-type gravity for the first time on an extended flight. The Churchill is on course for its rendezvous.
Doing a scan on the comet, they find an odd trace of something that is coming in contact with the comet itself. It's 150 miles long, and it seems to be hiding inside of the comet's flare. The captain, named Colonel Tom Carlson, orders the crew to send a message for instruction, but the comet is causing a radio silence. His right-hand man, Roger Darabridge, asks what he wants to do, and after a quick debate, they decide to investigate the object as it is the only chance they'll get for the next 74 years. The Churchill approaches the other object and the crew exit into space. They find a small port on the side of the object and go inside, noting that the entrance looks almost organic. They also begin to feel deja vu, noting that it feels like they've been inside this thing before. Inside, they find the occupants of the ship.
They look like bats. Giant bats.
There are thousands of the bats, but they all seem to be dead and crumble once Carlson grabs one, as they seem to be completely devoid of fluid.
Yummy.
Back on the Churchill, they notice as the other structure unfurls something from its side that begins to shadow the ship.
The only way to describe it is it's like a giant umbrella.
The crew bag one of the bats to take as a specimen before heading down a passage with a bright light at the end. Inside, they find 3 humanoid bodies that are perfectly preserved. As they stare at the humanoids, the crew feels strange and don't understand what's happening to them. They decide to take all 3 of the humanoids back with them to the ship, and then we cut to Earth 30 days later. We meet a man named Dr. Bukovsky, who is the main contact for the Churchill back on Earth, but we learn that the ship is completely radio dead. The ship seems to be on autopilot, and they realize that the course was set back when they left the comet. They send another ship called the Columbia up to space to receive the Churchill. They dock, and the Columbia crew enter. They're shocked to see the ship is completely gutted due to a fire. They find the charred remains of the crew up on the main deck, but they find that the 3 humanoids are in perfect condition, and they extract them back to Earth. At the Space Research Center, we learn that the cases that held the humanoids opened sometime off-screen. And we meet Dr. Falada. We see a researcher enter the room with the female humanoid, but the moment he touches her, she opens her eyes and sits up. Bukovsky sees the cam footage of this from his monitor in his own office, and he runs out to see what's happening. The woman takes off the researcher's mask and begins to kiss him. Suddenly, lightning sparks between the two, and the man begins to struggle. When Bukovsky arrives, the man falls into his arms, dead and drained. The woman then approaches him. She tells him to use her body before leaning in for a kiss. We cut away to see Dr. Falada rush into the room with a group of researchers. Bukovsky tells them what happened, and he calls the security to look out for the naked girl. They find her in the main lobby, but when they approach her, she takes the men out without even touching them. She shatters the glass windows and leaves the research building moments before Falada arrives. A man called Colonel Kane shows up to help with the situation, as he seems to be some kind of security specialist. They debrief the colonel on what happened, and we learn that one of the escape pods aboard the Churchill is also missing when the ship was cleared, and that Bukovsky is feeling really drained. Kane and Falada speak, and we're told that Falada is fascinated by death and life after death. He believes that the girl could hold some answers on death and believes her to be some sort of vampire, one that drains energy and life force from her victims in the same way that vampires drain blood. On the lower levels, the two male humanoids suddenly wake up. When they're fired upon, the bullets impact but don't stop the two in any way. The guards throw a grenade at them, which seems to work. When Kane and Falada hear the commotion, they rush down to the lower levels only to find the charred remains of the two vampires. We then observe the autopsy of the guard that was drained earlier. Just before the surgeon cuts into the man, his eyes open and he wakes up yowling. The surgeon becomes oddly mesmerized and begins to approach the guard. When they're close enough, lightning sparks between the two and the guard sucks the life force out of the doctor, restoring himself completely. The guard is sedated and thrown into an isolation cell. Kane gets a call about a dead girl in a nearby park, but when they get there, they find that it's not the vampire we saw before, but another victim, completely drained. We then cut back to the restored guard, and we learn that every 2 hours the vampires need to feed, otherwise they will revert back to their drained state. We also see the doctor from before has risen again, but he rushes at the bars and explodes into dust.
The same thing is going to happen to that girl we found in the park. In about 1 hour.
The girl returns to life and begins to thrash around on the hospital bed, but when she doesn't get any life force, she also explodes into dust. They then receive a call saying that they may have found the Churchill's escape pod. A group of soldiers approach the pod and open it to find Captain Carlson alive and well. Carlson is treated and quickly sent back to the research station to debrief what happened with Bukovsky, Falada, and Kane. We then get a flashback of what happened on the Churchill. One by one, the crew members began to feel strange. They acted odd, doing things like sabotaging the ship's communications before they were found completely drained. No one saw exactly what happened to them, but before long, Carlson was the only one left. Carlson seems to blank out, and when he comes to, he sees that they are hovering just above Earth. He knew that he couldn't expose the world to the humanoids and decided to take drastic measures. He started a fire aboard the ship, hoping to destroy everything on board before hopping into the escape pod and launching away. Carlson says that leaving the female was the hardest thing he's ever had to do. He was drawn to her so extremely that he wanted to stay even when he lit the fire, and pulling away from that desire was nearly impossible. Later that night, they receive a call about an object that has been spotted leaving the comet. The object is the same one that the Churchill boarded, and it will arrive to Earth in 2 days' time. Carlson then has a dream where the female begins to drain him. He wakes up screaming. The others rush in, but he can't remember what the dream was. He says that the woman seems to have a mental connection with him, but he can't access his memories when she's around. Falada decides that the best option is to hypnotize Carlson to see if they can open up that mental link. Through hypnosis, they track down the woman. Carlson sees that she has a different looking face and body, but the vampire has definitely taken over this new host. She is looking for a man that she can drain but not kill, one that she can hopefully use as a permanent life force. He's able to see the man's license plate, but the connection becomes too much and Carlson snaps out of the hypnosis. They wonder where the vampire's original body could be and think that it may be hidden and that they could use it as a potential weakness against her. After some time, they are able to track down the man in Carlson's vision and find that he dropped off the woman at an insane asylum. It's here that we meet Dr. Armstrong, the director of the hospital. They are taken to the woman's property and she eyes Carlson knowingly. Carlson is immediately aggressive towards her, but finds that the vampire is no longer inside of her mind. The woman knows where the vampire is now, but is resistant to say where.
Despite appearances, this woman is a masochist, an extreme masochist.
After some time, Carlson and the woman kiss, and it seems that he got what he wanted. He says that he received a mental image of a new person. He describes the image that he saw to Dr. Armstrong, and we learn that he's a patient here.
He's in solitary confinement. He's been naughty.
Armstrong has some pushback about them interviewing his patient, but after throwing their credentials at him, it's decided that they will hypnotize the man. They enter the room, but suddenly Carlson grabs Armstrong and Kane shoots him with a syringe. Armstrong screams before the sedative takes effect and he falls to the ground. It turns out that Armstrong was also a victim of the vampire, and Carlson saw his image as well as the patient's. Carlson can also feel that she is currently inside of Armstrong and is now trapped inside of his mind due to the sedative. As they question the man, he seems to be in pain and says that the thing inside of his mind is trying to stop him from talking to them. Suddenly, his voice changes to that of the vampires. We learn that the type of creature she is has the ability to change their shape and enter the minds of their victims. As the Churchill approached, they changed into humanoid creatures using the mental images that the crewmates provided.
I took my shape from your mind. I took your language. I became the woman I found there in your deepest thoughts, your deepest needs.
She opens her eyes and draws Carlson in. He tries to fight it, but his will isn't strong enough, and for a brief moment, his and Dr. Armstrong's lips meet. It seems that that was enough, and the others are blown backwards as the sky lights up with electricity. Wind blows throughout the room, but Kane is able to stand up and he rushes forward and injects the doctor with more sedative. Carlson was able to enter the vampire's mind for just a moment and says that they haven't stopped the spreading. On their way back, Falada contacts them and says that the two male vampires never actually died. It turns out that they transformed into the soldiers that shot them and then went undercover for a brief while. He then says that he was able to kill one of them by stabbing it with an iron stake in a specific place just below the heart. He says that he believes that the legends of the vampires actually came from these creatures, and Carlson confirms that, having seen them visit Earth at some point inside of the vampire's mind. Suddenly, blood shoots out of Armstrong's mouth and morphs into the shape of the female vampire. She screams before collapsing back into liquid, and her consciousness returns to her true body. Carlson then admits a truth that he's been hiding. He says that when he was on the Churchill, he was actually the one that destroyed the radio equipment and opened the vampire's cases. He says that he was in a state of love that was so powerful, it was frightening. He knew that she was killing off his men, but he couldn't stop and he didn't care because he felt chosen. He then reveals that she and her kind have destroyed hundreds of worlds. A radio broadcast goes through saying that there is chaos in the city as a kind of plague has overtaken the people. We see the devastation on the streets as hundreds of vampires begin to overrun the people and infect more. Carlson and Kane arrive at the Prime Minister's office. The Prime Minister himself is sweaty and fidgety.
I like to paint, or I make things. I like to...
What do you make?
I have a thing where I make models of... when I was in London, we're Mayor of London, we build a beautiful... I make buses.
You make models of buses?
And when he leaves, they see him drain the Lifeforce from his assistant. The two men then leave quickly. They want to get back to the research center, but the city is now under martial law, and they are forced to land behind a protected military line. They speak with the colonel and learn that the plague has gotten so bad that they are now considering nuking the entire city. Meanwhile, the vampire ship has locked itself into an orbit above London. A blue light is being pulled to the ship, and Carlson says that it's the energy of human souls that is being trapped on the vampire ship. But Carlson also knows that the female vampire is the conduit that serves as the converter of souls. They have to pass through her body in order to reach the ship. She also is calling to Carlson, and it seems that she gave him a part of her energy, and now she wants it back. Kane leaves for a moment to speak with the colonel, and while he's gone, Carlson steals a car and leaves. Kane commandeers a car and chases after the man, knowing that he'll be heading straight for the female vampire. Kane drives through the chaos-ridden streets, hitting vampire after vampire and giving us a good look at what has happened to London. Carlson arrives at a cathedral, being called by the vampire the entire time. When he enters, he sees a blue light radiating upwards, and he walks towards it. Kane has lost track of Carlson, so he heads to Fallada's office, and he finds the doctor still alive with the body of the vampire resting inside. When Kane asks how the man survived, he dodges the question. He says that he's discovered that there is life after death. He then says that he senses Carlson and the female vampire are in the crypts of the cathedral. He clearly has something wrong with him, and as he approaches Kane, the man shoots him in the chest. The doctor smiles before he falls to the ground, and his soul rushes to the sky. Kane then grabs the iron stake from the vampire's corpse and heads towards the cathedral. Carlson finds the female vampire, and she asks him to be with her, to join in her energy as destiny has always intended. Kane is now on foot and has to run through the streets of London. He's chased by a horde but is able to escape them due to falling rubble. He slowly but surely makes his way through the chaos, taking out a few vampires, but gets lucky as many of them haven't fed in some time and are beginning to explode into dust. He gets to the cathedral, but is stopped by the remaining male vampire.
It'll be much less terrifying if you just come to me.
The vampire stands there just T-posing, and Kane rushes at him before impaling the man with the iron stake. The vampire suddenly transforms into a bat-like creature before exploding into a charred corpse. Kane looks into the crypts and sees Carlson and the female vampire, joining energies. She says that Carlson is just like her, and that is why the man is drawn to her so completely. Kane calls out to the man, and Carlson reaches into the sky. Kane then drops the stake down to him, and he stabs the female vampire through her and into himself. They both explode into light and transcend into the vampire ship. We then see the vampire ship drift away as it no longer has a conduit on Earth. And that is where the movie ends. Lifeforce is amazing. The story is fun and it's wacky, but it takes itself serious to the point of a near apocalypse, and the effects that they used were also just incredible. Each time a conflict happened, I was sure that they were going to try and keep things isolated, but they subverted that expectation over and over. We started off in space, and then we moved into a research center, and then an asylum, only for the vampires to be one step ahead of the humans the entire time, causing things to get out of hand and nearly end humanity. For me, this is a nearly perfect movie. It was tense, and I could never guess where the story was going to lead, making me mesmerized throughout the entire runtime. The only real issue that I have is that time did seem to jump in a few places without informing the viewer, but realizing the time jumps only brought me out of the movie for a few seconds, and the context clues of what had happened and how much time had passed were prevalent after a few voice lines or a few character changes. I absolutely love the idea of expanding the vampiric mythos to beyond our world and placing things of legend into a somewhat science fiction genre. That, as well as proving that the vampires themselves are intelligent and the apex predators of the entire universe by delving into their prey's minds and morphing themselves to become what is both desirable and dangerous, really proved them to be a threat. It's something that would make sense in our current world as time progressed and these things were passed down in generational stories. While I understand that this movie may not be for everyone, it is comfortably within the small group of what I consider to be my favorite movies of all time. If you enjoyed this breakdown, then don't forget to like and subscribe so that you don't miss out on the next one. And if you'd like to see more of this, then check out the Space Horror playlist. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Lifeforce or any other films like this down in the comments below. But yeah, be wary of naked space ladies because they may just suck out your life force. Bye bye.
Believe it!